The skies had turned a strange shade of gray that afternoon, thick heavy clouds rolling over the Colorado mountains like a wave of cold steel. The town of Millridge, nestled quietly among the pine-covered slopes, was used to rough weather, but even the locals hadn't seen a storm like this in years. Robert Hayes, 58, a retired firefighter and lifelong bachelor, had been planning a quiet evening at his cabin. He had wood chopped, soup simmering, and a dog-eared novel resting by the fireplace. But life has a strange way of writing its own chapters. He had gone out to check on a neighbor's property, a habit from his firefighter days, when he was the one folks turned to during emergencies. The wind had already begun to howl when he noticed something out of place up the road. There just beyond the bend. A woman, barefoot, soaked to the skin, struggling to walk. She looked too young to be out here alone. Her hands clutched at her swollen belly. One wrong step and she'd have collapsed into the mud. Robert slammed the brakes, heart pounding. He opened his truck door and shouted over the storm, "Miss, are you hurt?" The woman turned, her lips trembling from cold, rain pouring off her hair. "Please," she gasped. "I think I'm in labor." Those words shattered the quiet of the forest, louder than any thunderclap. Robert didn't hesitate. Years of instinct kicked in. He ran to her, lifted her carefully into his arms, and placed her gently in the truck. But the road was already disappearing under rivers of water. Mudslides had blocked the pass. The nearest hospital was nearly 30 miles away and unreachable. "You're not going to make it to town," he said firmly, trying to keep her calm. "But I live close. We'll get you safe." The drive back to the cabin was slow, tense. The woman Angela, she whispered between contractions, gripped the seat and moaned through clenched teeth. Robert offered what comfort he could, even as the old truck bucked and slid in the storm. By the time they reached the cabin, the storm had become a monster, howling winds tearing branches from trees, sheets of rain turning the path into sludge. Angela could barely stand. Robert had no choice but to carry her through the storm, up the slippery path, cradling her like a daughter in his arms. She cried softly, not from pain alone, but from the strange warmth she felt in this man's arms. A stranger, a savior. Inside, the cabin was dim and rustic, but safe. Robert lit a fire, boiled water, laid out clean towels. His hands moved with practiced calm. He hadn't delivered a baby in years, not since a highway crash back in his firefighting days, but he hadn't forgotten. Hours passed in a blur of screams, sweat, and prayer. And then, a cry, sharp, alive, whole, a baby boy, healthy and red-faced, blinking up into a world he never knew he'd nearly lost. Angela wept as she held her son. "You saved us," she whispered to Robert. "You gave him life." Robert smiled, wiping tears from his own weathered eyes. "You gave him life. I just helped him arrive." In the morning, the storm cleared. A local rescue team arrived after a neighbor raised concern about the blocked roads. Angela and her newborn were taken to the hospital in town. Before leaving, she took Robert's hand and looked him in the eye. "I'll never forget you," she said, "and I'll make sure he never does either." Robert never saw her again. Robert continued his life in the mountains, quiet, peaceful, solitary. He fed stray dogs, volunteered at a local food pantry, and fixed broken porches for older neighbors who couldn't afford repairs. He didn't talk much about that night, not even when people asked why he'd added a cradle to the loft or kept a framed baby blanket on the mantel. Kindness, to him, was not a grand story. It was just a way of being. But time, too, takes its toll. Robert's health began to fade as he reached his 70s. One afternoon, while loading groceries into his truck, he collapsed in the store parking lot. A stranger rushed to his aid. Paramedics arrived. His breathing was shallow, his pulse faint. He was airlifted to a hospital in Denver. In the emergency room, chaos buzzed around him. Nurses called out instructions. Machines beeped. Oxygen masks pressed against his face. In the middle of it all, a young surgeon walked in, tall, confident, his badge read, "Dr. David Cole, cardiac surgery." Robert barely opened his eyes. His breath rasped. "Mr. Hayes," the doctor said gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I don't know if you remember me, but I know who you are." Robert blinked, trying to focus. "My mother was stranded in a storm. You carried her to safety. You helped deliver me." The young man's voice broke. "You saved both our lives. Now it's my turn." The world tilted. Robert's eyes widened. A flicker of a tear rolled down his cheek. You're the baby," he whispered, weakly. Dr. David nodded. "Because of you, I'm alive. I went to med school. I became a doctor. You gave me a chance. Let me give it back." The surgery was long and complicated. David stayed in the operating room for hours, refusing to hand over the case. For him, this was not just a patient. It was a calling, a circle that had to be closed. Robert made it through. When he woke up, still groggy from the anesthesia, he found a note resting beside his bed. In clean handwriting, it read, Asterisk, you carried me into life. Now I get to carry you forward. Dr. David Cole. Asterisk, life has a way of circling back. One moment of kindness offered with no expectation. No reward can ripple through time and return when we least expect it. Asterisk. Robert didn't carry Angela through the storm because he thought her son might save him someday. He did it because someone was in need, because he believed in the simple truth that we are here to help one another. Asterisk, and years later, that child born in a stormy cabin became the hands that gave him a second chance at life. Asterisk, kindness doesn't disappear, it waits until it can bloom again.